Welcome, Martin.
Hey guys, glad to be here. It's so important these days to keep on learning, and for me, life is all about learning new things. And at heart, I'm kind of an engineer and a creative hacker kind of person. But 6 years ago, I started People with some friends, and they were all better creatives than me. So I took on the head of new business role. So since then, I kind of have a new, exciting. Just do the full screen, and then I can go and click there, right? Yeah. So since then, I kind of done a business education, you could call it. And today is kind of my graduation. I never had an opportunity to talk so much about the business behind a hardware startup as I will today. So it's very exciting for me to share all this knowledge I got over the last 6 years of running People. And one of the key learnings has been that we've been working more and more with the startups. And around 4 years ago was the first time we realized normal consultant fees are a little bit expensive at the early stage for a startup. So we have to switch around the model. And we started working with some of the fees for royalty, meaning that we get paid when the product sells. So really to calculate that, I had to know how much is the startup selling already when we're starting to do the design, which means we have to look at kind of a business case. What will be the volume? What will be the retail price? And during the last 4 years, I've done this on a quite regular basis now. So this is one way I really learned about this stuff. And the second way is that we crowdfunded our own transparent speaker a few years ago. And we did kind of what you shouldn't do. We didn't go to Janne, who just spoke. Me and Per, ambitious and entrepreneurial, went around China a lot. And I learned a lot. Basically, at least we had a few entry points in the industry, some friends who worked at some sort of speaker company, and we had a few keys to set us off. And after a fair few visits, we learned to find a really good supplier, actually. So some of the learnings will be based on that as well. I hope this works. Yeah, so topics for today. I'm going to talk about something that's quite important called a BOM. Bill of materials. I'm going to talk about sort of shortcuts you can get to having a price idea, even if you haven't really been talking to a manufacturing partner or don't know what the component on a PCB costs. And both from a top-down and a bottom-up perspective. Then I'm briefly going to talk about finding a factory, and I have a star guest coming up on stage with me. And finally, I will talk about another boring abbreviation called cost of goods, Cogs. And this 6 I will skip. It became too many slides. So what is a BOM? It's all the parts in your product. Why is it good to have that? Well, basically, you can do fancy Excel sheets. If you have a business education and know how to do graphs, you can come up with things like how much will be fabricated just for this product? How much will be purchased, meaning that this is already an off-the-shelf component I can get in? What's on the PCB, the actual circuits? What will be the packaging? That's the PCB and that's the PCB component. So all this stuff we use in the business development of a startup to understand what's the lead time to get this in. Janne was talking about this. What will be the cost of goods? Not only the actual things that goes into the product, but all the other stuff around it, certifying the product and getting it out to market. How will the manufacturing process look like? What sort of quality aspects do we have to ensure? If you're doing a medical startup, you have way higher quality demands than if you're doing certain other products. And also like your cash flow. Some of the parts you might have to pay upfront, and paying upfront means maybe you have any salary this month and it's back to mom and noodles again. So it's kind of important stuff. And but most startups I meet, they've seen a BOM maybe once, they Googled it, and it looked like this, and it scared the shit out of them. So they never looked at it again, and just thought, we'll get to that eventually, let's build an awesome product. So what are the quick shortcuts you can do early stage as a startup if you want to build an awesome product and don't focus too much on Excel? One thing is just to understand a little bit how much will your product actually cost? Because you're going to know who you're going to compete with somewhat. I know some of you might do some super innovative stuff that the market never seen and you don't really know how to price it yet. But most of you guys will be put on a shelf next to something that are equally priced, or you are the most expensive thing or the lowest cost price. So here's just an example from, I think it's from one of the, if it's eBay or Amazon in the US, cheap bikes. And then you just take a lot of cheap bikes and you put them on a price scale and then some other positioning diagram, and you get, okay, there are bikes as cheap as $165, and there's bikes at $350. Then there's a much more expensive range continuing on. But I'm looking at cheap bikes currently. So within that, sort of how do I position myself? And then you come up with some more fancy marketing terms. How would the consumer talk about my product? Do they talk about a retro bike or freestyle bike or dirt bike, or one of the things that the consumer would go into the store and ask for, and you're trying to see if there's a clustering within that. So when you have an assumption like that, you will get a reference product. And this is very helpful to do this shortcut. You find a product that you think is pretty great, actually. You wouldn't mind to put your name on that product and say, that was me. And what we're going to do is this, but sort of better. So you take that sort of like similar-ish product, and you look at it more focusedly. And it should be priced around the same range that your product is. So let's take a Marshall speaker. I don't know, it's a Swedish sound industry is making this speaker. This is the Apple Store. It's $299 in the Apple Store. This is Swedish MediaMarkt, 2,690 Swedish crowns. And then this is Prisjakt, a site comparing all the Swedish places, and you can tell it's the same price on all the sites. So they have good price management. That's something that's very interesting to know about a company. And this is Alibaba, it's some random sort of similar product. It's priced at $34. So how do I use this quick data? Well, looking at the retail price in US, it's quite obvious they designed it for the Apple Store retail price, $299. They didn't design it for $2,690. It's not as clean and good looking price. So it's obviously this is the starting point for them when they're thinking about what will be the retail price. So that could be good information. Actually, when we did the transparent speaker, I talked to Apple about selling it there, and the retail guy it would be great if it was like $300. And I've seen, since Marshall went in there, they started with $550, then had a $400 one, and now they have a $300 one, and it's put on top in the Apple Store. So it makes a lot of sense to actually talk early stage with someone like, what's his name from MediaMarkt that's around in the hardware space. There's a guy that helps startups getting into media. Tahiro. Talk to someone like that and see where would you price our product? Where do you think it's going to be a good sell-through? It will really help you to know what do we need to aim for. So once you have that, unfortunately our speaker is very cool and luxurious material and great PCB. It's $850. So we didn't get into the Apple Store, which would have been nice. So Apple retail, they're on the top end of the space. I don't know if they get 50% or 60%, something quite really high. So you have to reduct that. This is a simple formula, but most people don't use it. You just take that price, divide it by 1, point the percentage you're doing, and then you get the price that you're selling to Apple for. This is very, very good. The only mathematics you need to learn. Yeah, this is the markup. They will take this and mark it up 50%. So then you have the distribution. Distribution can be very different kind of things because they can store your product. They might do some of the selling of your product. So they will argue for high margins. Some other people will argue for low margins. Most hardware startups dream of skipping distribution and going right into the sales channel because, yeah, you can give the sales channel a higher percentage maybe, and you get a higher percentage maybe. So, but a lot of cases it makes sense to have distribution. Basically, you don't have the time to go global by yourself. So then you take the distribution, you're down at this price. This is interesting because when you have this price, you have to think about, now it's my business case, right? This is what I'm gonna get into selling it to someone for. Then you have to calculate, okay, what's the margin I need between this and what I'm paying the factory? And then my rule of thumb is dividing it by 3. So you take this price and divide it by 3 because, yeah, it sounds a lot that if your manufacturing price is $55, you charge $166, but it isn't actually. It's going to cover all your salaries. This is basically the only income your company have. All your marketing, all your retention, customer acquisition cost, etc. So it's important to get that high enough. And if you can't do that 3 times, you probably don't have a good business case. So this is something that shocks a lot of startups I talk to, and this is a key learning. So then you get to this point, and your manufacturer, they will probably add around 15% at least, and there might be some more cups, but this is a quick rule of thumb. So you get to the BOM cost, the bill of material. All the things that goes into your product would be around $48. That to me sounds quite a lot for a Bluetooth speaker, but then again, Marshall has a really nice leather handle and stuff like that. So it might make sense. So then you do the same thing here. The only thing is different is the 25% tax in Sweden. In the US, they don't add the tax on the price. So that comes up, could be 10% sales tax on top of this price. But here we have the tax baked in. So it just adds another line in the equation that you learn right now. And then you get down to, that would mean a BOM cost of $38. So you have like, it's between this and this, maybe. And this is a good learning when you're like budgeting what components you can afford. And then you take the crappy stuff on Alibaba and you look, you take some of the specifications and you look, it's around $35. That's actually in the higher end. This is not the cheapest crap, but pretty crappy stuff. You can get a similar speaker for $35. And then they will probably add a 50 margin on top of their manufacturing price. So the BOM cost of that thing would be $22. So just from this simple thing, it took me an hour. I already have an estimate BOM cost. This pretty much no startup that I meet have when they come to me. And they seldom have a retail target price that's realistic. So start here. Then another way you can do it is just guessing bottom up. If you're a mechanical engineer or someone that actually knows a little bit about manufacturing, this is quite easy. You take mechanical parts, those are all the manufactured parts. So you have a casing, the front end, the back end, the feet maybe, the handle, the controls. Then you have the electronics. I'm just guessworking here. Full disclosure, I don't have any insights to sound industries. This is just my own kind of industry experience playing in here. So you have a Bluetooth thing on the card, you have an amplifier, you have some cables. Yeah, maybe $20. And then you have the external power plug, maybe $4.50. You have some drivers, maybe they're $5 each. Then you have a passive thing, maybe $11 total. Packaging manual, $3 could be higher, could be lower. MISC parts. Actually, I did this one first without doing the assumption. I ended up being exactly as the first assumption calculation I did. These things kind of please me now that I'm a business person. So yeah, you get to that point again, and then obviously the factory needs to pay the electricity bills, and they have some scrap and stuff, and then they will have their own profit margin. This could be very different. I just pointed it out. Medical companies that produce medical stuff can be 200% profit margin because they have clean room environments or other special requirements. They can charge a higher thing. They're more niche. Typical like consumer electronics guys, maybe 15%. So this is what you would pay the factory to put it on a boat. Then you would have to insure the boat and put the boat over the ocean. But this is a very common thing to get the FOB quote, freight on board, things on a boat. So yeah, pretty easy, right? No one does it. So another very important thing when pricing a hardware project is to understand that volume affects your price point. Is it 20 already? 10? But it's 10 now, right? No, but my personal time. I'm just keeping my own time here.
I think we're about 15 minutes in.
Okay, I'll keep head.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. But it's very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Thanks. So if now this is a graph from a blog post, so I just stole it because it was quicker than making up a whole graph by myself. But the bottom part here is the BOM cost, the bill of material cost. And here's 5,000 units shipped or bought. You probably will have that higher thing that I just calculated, like some estimate. But then if you do 50,000 units, your price will go down. Could be probably 25% because you have a higher ability to challenge, to negotiate the price. So probably here you see the price will go down a little bit. The only thing that tends to go up over time is actually the marketing cost that comes in the end here. Because yeah, when you're bigger, you need a bigger marketing budget. Not for all companies. Some companies like GoPro, they have a good viral built-in effect because people put up a video with their thing and people notice it. But if you have something like Nest, a thermostat, that's kind of boring. You have to tell people that they need it. So they have a higher marketing budget. So there's some thinking that goes into that. But this is a good image to have for yourself if you're like, you know, pitching a VC or something. You might want to have some sort of, and the margins will be even better once we hit 50K in volume. I did that with the trust. We don't have any investment in it, but so maybe not the best example. But I told, of course, the investors, yeah, and then we'll hit 50K and 100K, and look, like it will be even more profitable. So finally, manufacturing. Last 5 minutes. I want to bring up on stage Leo. Come up, Leo, my VIP guest of the night. So we share. So Leo is a friend of mine. He makes everything easier. Leo is from Hong Kong, and he has a design background, but he's also put several products of his own, but many other big companies' products through production. Yep. So nowadays, we try to involve Leo as much as possible in the manufacturing side. Like what we talked about so far, you can do from a desk. But at some point, you want to start meeting manufacturing partners. So this is me and Leo having dinner in January with the manufacturer of a power
supply. This is a good power supply manufacturer in Sunday in China, and they make very decent power supply, very good cost. Because of I know this guy for many, many years. So as we say that friends is very important in China, you know.
Yeah. So one thing that we increasingly is trying to do is getting factory contacts earlier in the process. It can save you a lot of stress and actually money too. So if a factory is too big where you cannot have this round table dinner with the owner, they're typically too big for a startup. That's our experience. I mean, sometimes we work with the really big OEMs, and depending on what kind of product you have, it might make sense. But a new approach that we're having increasingly is trying to find a few of these factories. So how do you find them? Oh yeah, one funny thing. In the factories, there's a lot of misunderstanding between language. So this is one of the mottos of the struggles: to help employees achieve dream, growth shares with our client, let China power supply the whole world, and endless struggle. Yeah, so these are the things that Leo really helps us, and we laugh, and he has to explain to the factory owner why we're laughing at his strong principles for his company. So this is some of the short discussions I was bringing Leo on stage to have, because one thing is that when you work with a factory, you want to have a fair few things figured out. I think Jan was speaking to this as well. You can't just come there with an unspecified dream. That's when the sample is a good thing. We want to make this, but better. It really helps everyone in the room to understand, even if your English isn't perfect, right? So you can point to this thing, you can point to a price that you want to reach, and you can explain what the BOM price will need to be. And then, of course, if you're looking for factories, it makes sense to look for someone that makes similar things. They don't have to relearn something. It was hard for us because we did glass in the speaker. No one in the speaker business did glass speakers. So the first line that we put together, we had fingerprints on the inside of all the glass. Had to stop, go back, redo it. Scary stuff. So finding good reference points. How do I make this a discussion now? So how do you what information do you need from a startup to really source free goods suppliers?
The first thing is that you need to know the factories, and then you need to really know the factory, what they can do, and then what's the background of factories. So this is very hard to every startups in here, because well, for me, I'm in Hong Kong, I'm half Chinese, and well, I can say that because my half life was British, and now I'm a Chinese. So this is true. And then you need to meet the factories, and then you need to understand what they can do, and then what really the factory manager or the factory boss is willing to do for you. This is the most important. And once you find a good partner with the factories, he can do whatever you want. Of course, you need to pay the price, but this is a very reasonable price. You cannot get from another things or another factories that you can do. So the first thing is you need to have a good friends in the factories. This is the most important. The second thing is you need to compare the factories, because you're not only to go for one, and then you can see that, hey, I have another friend, John, he can make the similar things. Any chance that we can talk together? And then he knows that he has competitor, and then, well, he can pay more attention. Maybe in terms of the quality, that's is most important. Because even though he lowered the price, but the quality is also good, then it's still not the good things for you as well. So you need to have some comparison between your friends between friends. And I'm sure that they all know that there's a competition in the world. So this is very common and open to all the factories as well. So don't be shy or don't be feel pity for your friends. This is a business, and then they all know that. So make it open, transparent is the most important things.
Yeah, great. I'm sort of forcing in my slides here. It becomes a bit awkward. But I'm just saying one of the things that would be nice is also to decide what am I really doing in this product? Because that's what you really want to help the factory to excel at, right? So it could be many different things. Maybe it's fantastic mechanical invention. So your door is smoother than any other door. Or it's in the software side. And that will also be like if the factory doesn't understand that in your product and don't share your vision in that, it's not likely to be great. So this is also can affect kind of what product or what factory you should work with, because they have to understand your vision and want to build that together with you. And I mean, not maybe all of your vision could be understood because you're a crazy entrepreneur, but at least some baseline stuff, right? And this is for the smaller. So when it's a good time, like we talked to, it could be enough to have like a rough proof of concept prototype to do this kind of trip. Then it's more of a research trip, and you can be straight with that. You're not asking for solid quotes yet. You just want to build relationship. When you come a little bit further, you have a work-like prototype or look-like prototype. You're about 80% done. This is the right time to really build relationship with factories. If you go too far and start really high-resolution engineering the prototype, it's most likely that you have to take a step back at some point and redo it regardless, because the manufacturing process changed or something coming closer to reality changed in the product. So this is kind of my mindset about this. You try to get a list of at least 10 manufacturers. That's a bit ambitious, but it's possible. And then you shortlist 3 or 5 that you want to go and have dinner with Leo and someone from People or Janne's People or someone else that can help you ask the right questions. You go there, before you sign the NDA, so you can show them a bit more comfortably. Sometimes we don't show exactly everything that the product is about, but what's useful for the discussion. You have the visit. Then once you have a good relationship with 2, then you start negotiating. And it's really good to have 2 factories because your negotiation position is much better, right? You can compare quotes. You can say, well, they charge only that amount for this part. Why are you charging this much? So it's really like logical negotiations. You don't have to have 20 years in the game to understand this. So finally, cost of goods. I'm just saying there's a burn rate. And basically, if you have a burn rate, if you have 5 employees and you have to change a product, typically in Kickstarter or crowdfunding, it's like at least half a year. That's cost you. That's why I know crowdfunding projects are really profitable, because they didn't plan with this. This costs to have your community manager sitting and keeping everyone happy, right? So think about that too when pricing. Do you have any more thoughts for the audience? Sorry.
So thanks a lot, and then I'm sure that we can talk later, right?
Yeah, just ask me and Leo. Thank you so much.